Hello, Facebook world. Tim Anderson here, November 8th, 2019. A lot is happening, and it's happening quickly. I did not intend to be doing daily Facebook updates, but I think we have to talk about this because my first video, which dealt with the expected changes, looks like I was a little off on one of my predictions. My first video, which I made 2 days ago, pretty much is almost dead on with Governor Northam's cabinet meeting that he hosted on Wednesday, except as to the AR-15s, and we really need to start drilling down on this. This year, the legislature passed a very radical AR-15, not just AR-15, but just assault rifles. By the way, AR does not mean assault rifle, just so any of you who may have thought that. The first type of rifle was made by a company called Armalite, and they called it an Armalite AR-15 model. So that's where this whole nomenclature came from. So sometimes people say AR-15s and assault rifles in kind of a connective type of a word, but AR does not mean assault rifle, just so you know. Anyway, so I said on Wednesday the state can't ban a firearm like an AR-15 because the United States allows them to be sold. The United States has something called the Supremacy Clause, and the United States make the laws, and states can't make a law that would be bigger than the United States law, which is pretty much why states can't create regulations on immigration, and they can't do other things. So here's the deal. Governor Northam is now on the record of saying they are going to make AR-15s and assault rifles illegal. Now, the definition of what an assault weapon is something to still be talked about and something to be looked at. But it seems as though what they're going to say in Virginia is that anything that would resemble an AR-15, something that can rapidly detach a magazine, something that can hold more than 30 rounds, or more than 10 rounds, I should say, something that that has a folding telescoping stock, something that has a thumb hole stock. All of that language is going to be what's going to be defined as an assault weapon. Now, these laws are in other states like California, like Connecticut. And in those states, they define these rules, and how most of the manufacturers have got around them is, the big one is that the firearm can't hold more than 10 rounds, for instance. And so what the manufacturers have done is they create smaller magazines. And when you create a smaller magazine, that will make the firearm legal per se under the rules. Now, what's important to know here is that now, looking at what Governor Northam is saying, it is going to be even more radical than that. First off, even California, even super liberal California, has a grandfather clause in their laws, which basically means that if you own the firearm legally before a certain date and time, then you're allowed to still own it. Now, you're not going to be able to sell it, and you can't, there's some other restrictions, but there's a grandfather clause in California. There's a grandfather clause in Connecticut. The bill that they're talking about now, what he is now on the record of saying, is not going to have a grandfather clause, which will mean that if if this law passes and it gets challenged in court and we lose and all of that, then you owning something that would be considered they don't call it assault weapons, they're calling them dangerous weapons. So if you have a dangerous weapon, then that would be considered a felony to possess if you possess it after the time period that the legislature has given you. And what it looks like they're saying now is 1 year from the date of the law enacting, which would be July 2020. So that would make it July 2021 would probably be the time when it would be illegal, which means you have to get it out of Virginia if you want to legally keep it, or you have to destroy it. There's no provisional buyback period in what they're talking about. They're just talking about straight out saying, if you own this, which is something you've legally owned prior to the law, it will be a felony to possess it after some date in the future. Now, rest assured that somebody's going to fight this. I'm sure the NRA is going to come in and they're going to fight this. But here's the issue. Here's the kicker. You, as a lawful gun owner, can't, take the risk that, the law is going to change and then be considered a felon for possessing a firearm that you legally purchased sometime in the past. So you need to start making contingency plans to get your dangerous weapons out of Virginia. Not today, not even probably next year in 2020, but there is going to have to be something where you're going to want to get them out of Virginia if the law as they're talking about comes down. You're going to want to get them out. So what would be considered a dangerous weapon? They're saying now anything that would, a semi-automatic rifle that would hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, that in and of itself would be considered a dangerous weapon, or any firearm that has an overall length of less than 30 inches. Now that's kind of like the short barrel rifle kind of conversations. So it is radical. I didn't think 2 days ago that it was going to be this radical. It is crazy radical. This is a time to start panicking if you have an assault weapon, if you have a dangerous weapon, as what Virginia is going to propose. In California, there's a grandfather clause. When the United States did this, there was a grandfather clause. There is a rule that says that the government can't just take something away from you. There's a part of the Constitution that says if you own something and you legally own it, the government can't come in and take it from you without compensating you, which is why you've heard about these buyback programs. However, that is not what's being proposed. I mean, I'm reading it, I've read it, and what they are talking about is straight up, you will be a felon if you are possessing this. We're not going to buy it back, and this is what's going to happen. Now, the good news about this is that because this bill is so radical, I'm hoping that the Crimes Commission comes back and says, look, this isn't going to pass. This didn't even pass in California. They put provisions and grandfather clauses in the laws in California. So hopefully this thing gets watered down a little bit. But what they talked about at the gun special session on guns is substantially more aggressive than even what we're seeing in other states, even super liberal states like California and Connecticut. So here's kind of the modification of my video from 2 days ago. This is a very dangerous place to be in if you own this kind of a weapon. Not something you have to get rid of today, not something you have to get out of the state today, but we have to watch this very carefully. I'm watching Governor Northam talk about it. He, in his cabinet meeting, he was very clear that this is a top priority. This is not something that is going to, just be looked at this year, coming in 2020 and go away. The legislation will make it illegal. That will violate the supremacy clause of the United States. And I suspect that the NRA will shoot back. California, let me tell you a little story about what California did. About, I think it was probably 1990, maybe even 2000-ish, California said high-capacity magazines are illegal. So if you have a magazine that holds, say, 20, right, or 25, California said you can't own a magazine that holds more than 10. And what they did is they made it illegal to sell guns in California that have magazines that hold more than 10 in pistols and other things. But if you owned the the firearm before the law kicked in, grandfather claused in, then you were still allowed to have it. You just couldn't sell it or transfer it and all that. Well, in 2016, California went even further that said, hey, if you own this magazine after a period of time in the future, you're going to be a felon automatically. And so the NRA and the Gifford Foundation, they fought that in San Diego. And in 2019, this year, a federal court said you can't criminalize somebody for owning something that they legally owned prior to the law changing, and struck that down. Now that's on appeal, and who knows how that's all going to strike out. But that judge implemented the rule that says the government just can't take something away from you and make it illegal for you to own it. And this is why I've been saying the state can't come in and say AR-15s are inherently illegal. What they will say is an AR-15 or an assault weapon is defined this way, and then what will happen is the manufacturers will undo that. But Governor Northam is saying no to that. It's going to be illegal, period, regardless of the magazine capacity and all of that. Hopefully that gets watered down, but I wanted to throw that out there for you all to think about. I'm not the guy saying, hey, this is what I think should happen. I'm telling you what they're saying from Richmond. This is going to be a very bad thing if this is something that you own. So, having said all that, I'll update you further. Hopefully you won't hear from me again for a few days, maybe weeks. But I'm watching it. When more comes out of Richmond, I'm gonna report that to you. I'm gonna tell you what's going on and try to explain it to you so that you know what you need to do. Don't go running and getting rid of your guns. Anything that's going to happen, even under this most radical bill, is probably not going to take place until early 2021. But it is something that we need to be watching and be careful of. And you also may want to think about whether you're going to buy one now. I mean, it may not be the right time to buy, or it may be the perfect time to buy. It's something you're going to have to inherently decide. But that's where we are. Today's November 8th. This is changing rapidly. You're watching this 3 months from now. Everything I'm saying could be completely wrong. So this is just as of today, as I know what's going on. Have a nice day. This is Attorney Anderson.